Hi everyone. This video is a quick feedback video on how to do well in an exam. My students have just been sitting an exam and I have been marking the exam together with a colleague, and I thought it would be really useful to share a few tips, hints and tricks on how you can do better in an exam. Now, the exam my students were sitting is actually quite unusual for students to have exams these days. We don't have that many exams anymore. Most of our assessments are more like real world tasks where students have to write a blog post, put together a poster, write a report. And as they progress through the years, through their study, they write more and more elaborate sort of projects, do research, and so on. But these students are first year students. They were sitting an exam. It was a seen exam, so they had seen the questions beforehand and now had 2 hours. Most of them had 2 hours to write down their answers. Some students had more time because we do have reasonable adjustments. So students with any conditions, etc., are being assessed. And then these students are given extra time. Some students may be allowed to write on a computer instead of by hand, etc., etc. So that is quite sort of targeted, individual with respect to each of the students. Now, what I realized quite early on is that what makes the best preparation for an exam is really for students to turn up to all the lectures and take notes. And then before the exam, try to read through the notes again. Is there anything that is unclear? Is there anything you may have forgotten or you're not totally sure about? If there's still time, if there still is a lecture or seminar left, then ask. If there isn't time, then try to find out yourself. Try to find out about those particular topics that you struggle with. And if there is reading on the module, if you were asked to read various texts or so, or have a textbook maybe, then make sure you have a look at that and make sure that you understand the general concepts. Now, understanding isn't always being able to reproduce something, but understanding is sort of the first step on the way. And once you start thinking about it, you'll be able to reproduce what you've been learning a bit more easily. But if you have time, then by all means try to make up questions yourself. If it's not a scene exam, if it's something out of the blue, or if you're just preparing for a scene exam but you haven't seen the questions yet, you can try and write down some things. You can try and summarize some of the stuff you've been learning in class, and thereby see what you're struggling with, whether there's something you want to look up again, because it's really weird. You think you understand it, but actually when you have to write it down, all of a sudden there's this thing where you go, oh, what was this again? I thought I knew it, but now I have to explain it myself. I'm actually not quite sure. So preparation, absolutely key. The first one, always a good preparation. And then when it comes to the actual day of the exam, give yourself lots and lots and lots of time. Arrive an hour early if you can. If you live further away, maybe arrive the day before and stay over at a friend's house or whatever is possible. And then arrive and be sure you know where you're going. Where's the room you're going to? What's the setup? What do you need? And if you don't know, then ask your lecturer, okay? Nothing wrong in asking questions and just being absolutely sure that what you're doing is the right thing. And also remember the things you may need in the room. So a few of my students forgot their student card, their ID card. And that's something that I would have done as well myself. I would have thought of everything else and then would forget the thing that would actually get me into the exam room. We found a way. I was there to identify the students and help with this, but you may be turned away if you don't have your ID card. So that could be a really big issue if you don't have that. So remember your ID card. Remember a pen. A few of our students forgot their pens, and it was like a handwritten assignment, etc. So just try to think, what is it you're actually needing in the exam, and then bring that thing with you. Okay, so That also includes, for example, things like login info. So we had students writing on a PC, being able to use a computer for the exams, and you may be requested to log in to your, in our case, it's Blackboard. In any virtual learning environment, you may have to log into that in order to then access the exam information. So just be sure that you have that prepared before you come to the room. Okay, so the exam has started. You're sitting there, you're being given your questions, and now you have a certain amount of time to finish the exam. Usually at our university, there's a timer at the front so you can see what the time is and sort of organize your time according to that. But whatever the setup, whatever the situation, I think the very, very best thing first is to just take a deep breath and have a look at the paper and see what is required. Okay, on the first page, you have to write down your student number and your name on a separate slip that's taken off so the marking can be anonymous. Write that down. Just look at it and write it down and make sure you filled in that first page as much as you can. And then sit and have a look at the questions and relax. Try to think of the questions without panicking. This is really, really difficult. I've sat exams, I've taken sort of evening classes and sat exams in those. I know how difficult this is, but I keep reminding myself that this is what actually makes the exam successful. This is how you can get a much, much better mark. It's not starting to panic and just write blah everything down, but rather relax, take it easy, organize your thoughts. And usually at our university, you have, an exam booklet, or you have some space where you can do a little bit of planning. It's a good idea just to do some scribbles, to plan out what you want to say in which ways, and then you can cross that out and refer your marker to the right place where that question is answered. Okay, so you're answering your questions. Try to be really clear about what the questions on the exam paper actually are. So what exactly is asked of you? Just make it really clear that you understand what you have to do and that you do all of it. So I've seen some student papers, students who did really well on some questions, maybe not so well on other questions, but some students who wouldn't answer one of an overall of 5 questions. And when there's 5 questions and you have to answer each one of those, chances are that for each of those questions, they are 20% of the overall mark, or marking may be allocated in different ways. But one of the questions may actually be quite important. And in my case, in the marking I've just done, I saw that one question had 40% of the overall marks. A lot of the overall mark was given for that question. And one of the students hadn't answered that question. And that is a real shame when that happens, because that student may not pass because they have not answered that question. So just make sure in planning that you give what you know about a topic. Obviously, don't write a very long answer if you don't know anything about that question, but chances are you'll know a little bit. I mean, if you've been there, if you've done the preparation, even if it escapes you in that moment. But try to relax and think, what could I say about this question that is an answer that would potentially give me some points. Okay, now you've sat the exam and you see that you still have a little bit of time. If you're lucky, you may just have spent the whole 2 hours writing. In our case, 2 hours was quite a generous allocation, so students had some time. And then if you have that time, use it wisely. First, again, relax, take a deep breath, and then look over what you've written. Chances are there may be things you can change a little bit. There's something you can add. Nothing wrong with adding something. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But what I've seen in the past, actually not in this paper, but in the past, I've seen students adding a lot, having a lot of time, and then thinking, I could add another 3 paragraphs here. Uh, and sometimes the original version was actually quite good, but then the added paragraphs would go way beyond what I was expecting and potentially off on another topic and potentially slightly wrong, bringing the overall mark down ever so slightly. So, do yourself a favor and just answer the stuff that is relevant, that is needed. Okay, one final check. Have we got everything? Is the number there? Is all the information there? Have I answered all the questions? Is there maybe something I've misunderstood? Look at the question paper again. Have I answered every sub-question, every single element of that paper? And once you've done that, hand in your responses and whew, well done, you've gotten through this one. Up and onwards, on to the next one. Now, this is not quite it, because your lecturers will mark your exams, obviously, and you'll get your mark back. But you can also get feedback. And the way this is done, again, differs a lot across universities. But when you get your mark, and you either get it with some feedback attached, or you get your mark and you think, oh, I really want to know how I've been doing. Contact your lecturer and say, I would like to have some feedback on this. And then use that feedback wisely to inform how you address your next exam, your next assessment, how you're preparing for the next thing you have to do. Okay, this is a quick run through, and I'll put in a slide here with a summary of the whole thing. Preparation. Arrive on time. Make sure you relax and read the questions carefully. Ensure you answer all of the questions. Go over the overall answers and make sure that they really are answering what the questions were asking you to answer. And then finally, make use of the feedback to ensure that you learn from your mistakes or from what you've been doing well to do as well, to do better in future.